You're watching PowerNation. Today on Carcass, our Rally Honda is in the shop and we start prepping for its day at the track. We'll show you how to make new racing seats fit in the factory locations by using some existing hardware.
Then we'll fabricate a custom roll cage that'll keep us safe out on the course. Hey guys, welcome to Carcass. Today we've got our 1996 Honda Civic in the shop, and last time we got the entire interior stripped out, and now we're ready to move on.
And how this all got started was with a driveway rescue. When we found our Civic, it wasn't in running condition and had been parked for a while. So after doing a quick tune-up and replacing the fuel pump, we fired this thing up and took it for a test drive. Then we brought it back to the shop and took it down to engine power for Pat and Frankie's very first front-wheel drive dyno pulls. And you could say the numbers we got were pretty surprising.
93.
Awesome, yeah, all right.
After we were all done with that, we brought it back down to our shop and started stripping the interior to prep for our roll cage. What we have in store for our little hatchback is to make this into a bona fide rally car, adding some race seats and 5-point harnesses to go along with our roll cage.
To help in the horsepower category, we're going to throw on a better flowing intake and injectors, upgrading the clutch and axles, and top it off with a turbo. To finish the look, we'll give it a rally-inspired paint job and wrap it up with a set of new wheels and rally-specific tires. So today we're going to be addressing some safety equipment and fitting up a couple racing seats and building a roll cage.
And we don't want to work on this thing when it's so low to the ground, so the first thing we're going to do is build a set of wheel stands. A quick and easy way to build a set of wheel stands is by using some 2x4s. They're plenty strong, and our Civic doesn't weigh that much anyways. Plus, this will get our Civic off the ground, and yet it'll still keep the suspension loaded, which is ideal for us as we start building out our roll cage. When making your wooden wheel stands or cribs, you'll want to measure the width of your tire to help you decide on how long to cut your boards. You'll also want to know the desired height you want to get your project off the ground. We're going with the foot, which will give us plenty of room to work around our Honda. We cut our boards to about 14 inches apiece. That gives us a good saddle for our Honda tires to sit in, plus makes these things usable for other projects. So now what we do is just stack them up, kind of like Jenga, and then we just screw them down. When assembling, you may want to pre-drill your holes to help your wood from splitting on the ends. All right, take a look at these things.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be nice.
That's good right there.
Got it.
There we go. Yeah, that'll do it.
That's gonna make it a lot easier on us too.
Yeah.
So we're not stooped over the whole time.
Yeah, this is a good working height right here.
For our driver's seat, we're going with RaceQuip's FIA certified full containment composite seat. If you've ever had a high performance driving experience, or if you've ever just whipped a car around a turn really fast, you could probably look at the seat and tell it's not going to hold you in that well. But with these seats, we have the nice hip, shoulder, and helmet bolsters that keep you locked in and help you control the car a lot better. We also got these nice aluminum mounting brackets, but we will be modifying those because the overall idea here is to take our stock sliders and mount them to this seat. That way we can adjust for different driver heights, and if you've ever mounted seats before, it just kind of sucks because oftentimes you have to try and contour metal to match the floor, and it's very time consuming, versus these, they already fit in the car, so it's just dead easy. So I gotta start by taking these brackets off. After taking off the nuts on the left side bracket, we can use the air hammer to pop off the rivets holding on the other. Oh, that easy. A little superficial damage, but nothing crazy. All right. Now we can take off the adjuster handle. This is held on with a couple spot welds, so we'll drill them out and the bracket comes right off. This is our left side seat mount. So the idea here is to take a measurement between this hole and this stud, transfer it to the bottom face of our new mount, and then I'm actually going to drill 2 or 3 holes and slot them, because that way when the seat is mounted, it'll allow for some adjustment of the rails, because you don't want them to bind, and that way they'll glide freely. So I just got to take a measurement. It's about 12.5. With our measurement, I'll scribe out where we need to make our holes on our bracket. Then we can start drilling out the holes. The last thing we got to do is use a die grinder and make these into slots. And here's a tip for using a die grinder. There are bits out there like this one that are specific for aluminum, but if you don't have one and you only have one that's used for steel, they can load up with aluminum. So one way to get around that is to take a bar soap that you get from the store, just any generic brand, and load up the bit first. That way the aluminum doesn't get in there and just make your life a nightmare. We don't need these perfect, just enough so the seat bracket can move freely. All right, put this dude on, then we can move on to the other side. For our other seat bracket, I'll use the factory bracket to mark my holes with a punch, drill them out, and mount them up. Now let's see how this thing fits. Everything's kind of loose, so I can make sure everything's going to line up. And it looks like everything's lining up pretty well, so we'll throw some bolts in it. That way we can start on the cage. Coming up, we start making plans for our rally car roll cage. I've got the seat installed now, and I actually have it slid far enough back where it's too far away for my preference, but that way it simulates if there is someone who's taller than me driving. So now I can work on placing the main hoop. And if you are doing any kind of racing, it's a good idea to consult whatever rule book there is available. That way you can build your cage and make sure it's legal. So now all I have to do is take some measurements, cut, bend, and we'll see where we're at. I'm going to put a piece of tape roughly in the center of the roof. I'm actually going to take a measurement across the roof and mark the center, because I think it's easier to build hoops from the center out rather than try to do it from one end. So this is 35 3/4 divided by 2, 17.5 plus 3/8 is 1770. Okay, now I'm going to put my cheater up here roughly where the tube's going to land. Measure from my mark on the cheater to the center, 13 1/4. And I'll subtract probably a 1/2 inch just to give myself some room over here against the body. $52, okay. With our measurements, we can head over to the chop saw and start cutting our tube. We're using 1.5 inch by 120 wall DOM for our cage. With it cut, we can head over to the tubing bender and get started on the main hoop and the side hoops. One more bend, then we should be good. 2. That's right about 2. Cool. Cool, that's it. All right. Fits pretty good, actually hits the roof in a couple spots, which we can weld it there, add some more rigidity. At this point, we have the 3 most difficult tubes to make out of the way. We've got the side hoops in and we have the main hoop in. There's plenty of clearance between the back of the seat and the main hoop, which is something we were looking for. And these 3 tubes are the base of any roll cage, so we'll have no problem making the rest of the tubes off of them. And before we start tacking anything in, we have to consider how we're gonna weld the top portion of the cage. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a mark around where each tube lands, and then we'll take a hole saw and drill a hole in the floor. That way, once the cage is completed, we can drop everything down and we'll have access with our torch up at the top. So right now I just gotta mark some holes and get the cage out of here. All right, that's all of them. We've got our holes cut in the floor now, and while this is a common method of constructing roll cages, if you've never done one before, you might be wondering how the heck we're gonna keep the roll cage up now that we have holes in the floor. So all we're gonna do is make a plate to go over the hole and under the roll cage, and then later on that plate will get welded to the floor and then the cage will get welded on top of the plate. So I just gotta take some measurements and I'll cut it out on the iron worker. It's about 6.5 by 3.5. For our plates, we'll be using some 1/8 inch steel. All right, now we can keep working on our roll cage. We'll show you a cool trick on how to remove factory sound deadening, plus put the finishing touches on our roll cage. All right, that'll work. We have our floor plates made now, and we have to prep the floor for welding later. We've got this sound deadening stuff on the floor and we have to get rid of it. One way to do that is to use a propane torch and something to scrape it with, but that just makes this hot, gooey mess. The way that we're gonna do it is use a mixture of dry ice and rubbing alcohol. And what that does, it kind of just freezes everything and helps separate the glue from the floor, and it doesn't leave a sticky residue. You'll wanna make sure you're wearing a pair of insulated gloves when doing this to protect you from frostbite burns. Okay, so that crackling sound that you're hearing is actually the glue releasing from the floor. So once that kind of stops, we'll know it's a good time to start scraping. All right, I think this is ready. I'm gonna move this to a new spot, and then I'll see if we can't get this up. Oh yeah, it's coming off easy now. Yeah. Nice. After the floor is cleaned of the sound deadening, we can take our wire brush and clear up any seam sealer or glue that was left in the corners. And then finish prepping the surface with a grinder. All right, now we have the floor prepped and we can start throwing down the base plates and put together the cage. Number 1. All right, gotta get the welding stuff. You could MIG weld these joints, but I'm gonna be using the TIG welder. The reason for this is because it's my preference and that's what I'm comfortable with. I'll start by tacking in the main hoop and the door bars, then add our dash bar, followed by the upper hoop cross member. Next, we can add our corner gussets. Finally, I'll tack in the upper roof braces. All the tubes that we have in here now need to be welded before I keep going forward. Once I put the door bars in, the cage won't be able to drop as far down through the floor. So right now I'm going to pull the floor plates, drop this thing down, and start welding the top. With our cage all the way down, I can access the top of the roll cage and fully weld all the joints. Then we'll slide the cage back up and drop in our plates. We'll lay down a few tacks to hold everything in place. And then we'll go back and fully weld everything in. This will give us a super strong base for the roll cage. With the plates fully welded to the floor, now we can TIG the roll cage to the base plates. With the main portion of our cage all welded in, the next thing I'm going to do is fit up our harness bar. And there's one really important thing that you have to consider when you put this in. To make sure that the harnesses work properly, the top of the bar has to be level with your shoulders or up to 20 degrees below. I've already had the seat in here, so I made a mark where my shoulders were, so all I have to do is tack this in. All right, with that tacked in place, I have a couple more support tubes to put in and the rear support section, but other than that, this cage is looking really good.
With our roll cage done, now we can start tearing out our engine.
I've got the cage all wrapped up in the seat in here and everything fits great. The cross braces, down bars, and door bars all fit up no problem, and I'm really happy with how this thing came out. So now we're moving on to everything under the hood.
And the plan there is to add some horsepower to our little 4-cylinder. There's a couple things we want to take care of. We're going to end up replacing the clutch. We're going to end up taking care of a couple little oil leaks and probably throw a timing belt at it. It's going to be a whole lot easier if we just pick the engine and transmission clean out of the car. So that's where we're going to start.
We're not going to need this anymore. Get out some of these electrical connectors. Get the radiator out of here next.
Moving over to some hard parts on the engine, I'll remove the bolts that hold on the heat shield, followed by the nuts that hold on our exhaust manifold. With our exhaust out of the way, it makes it easy to access our AC compressor, so small, so tiny, and our lower motor mount. So this is what you find on high mileage cars, like our Honda's got over 250,000 on it. This is one of 4 motor mounts. So we're definitely gonna have to replace that because that's completely shot. You know, this is one thing a lot of people forget about. You know, motor mounts, it's just something that you don't think about replacing, but they do need to be replaced. We're almost done underneath here. I got a couple more connections. Then we gotta go down, take some of the suspension apart because I gotta get the axle shafts out. It's coolant temp sensor. That's the distributor. Here's another coolant temp sensor. Well, this car is coming apart quite easily. That's why I love Southern cars. Just like that. It just straight up fell apart. It goes through there now. Well, at this point, don't matter. We're not reusing them. There, that works. Now that I've made a giant mess with axle grease, I'm gonna put the suspension back together because we do plan on rolling this thing around. Then we'll go underneath the hood, get rid of a couple connections, grab the cherry picker, get that engine out of there. Perfect timing. With our engine supported, we'll loosen the rest of the motor mounts and pick this little 4-cylinder out of its home.
Yeah, you're clear.
Man, that sure did come out of here easily, but that thing's filthy, and so is the inside of the car, actually.
Yeah, I'm gonna take this outside and power wash it. Maybe you wanna roll this thing out there?
Yeah, I'll just do the inside of the engine bay here. This will be simple. I can push the car out by myself.
Before we wash this thing, we're gonna spray it down with some heavy-duty degreaser to break up some of the dirt and grime. To clean this stuff up, we're using a Bauer 2300 PSI electric pressure washer that we picked up from Harbor Freight. The 13-amp brushless motor delivers 2300 PSI of cleaning force and delivers over 30% more cleaning power than standard electric pressure washers. It plugs into a regular 120-volt outlet using a 35-foot power cord. This quiet pressure washer puts out 1.2 gallons per minute, comes with 4 quick connect spray nozzles, and has an onboard detergent tank for improved cleaning.
If you like anything you've seen on the show today, why don't you check us out at PowerNationTV.com.
And be sure to check out our project pages where you can stay up to date on any past and current projects, like our square body tow truck, Project Junk Mail, and our Rally Honda.
Thanks for watching Carcass.